Do you want to build dangerous farms but are too intimidated by mobs constantly harassing you? Like especially nether farms, where ghast and things will knock you off into lava. Well, what if I was to tell you that there is a super easy way to build a mob switch in Bedrock? That's what we're going to go over in this video, is how to turn off mob spawning in an area. Now, one thing to mention is that a global mob switch is much more difficult to build on Bedrock. This is a local mob switch that will cover a 9x9 chunk area, preventing spawns within that region. Now, this isn't limited to the nether, but the nether gets the most benefit out of it. Turning off all of the mobs that spawn on a fortress makes building a wither skeleton farm a breeze. The way this works is that we are filling up the population control caps. When a mob tries to spawn, the game will check 4 chunks in each direction to see how many mobs of any given type there are, and if it finds that there are too many mobs of a certain type, then that spawn will fail. We'll talk about the other dimensions later on, but one nice thing about the nether is that it only has cave spawns for monsters. This makes it super easy to just turn off all spawns in the nether. Starting off, we need to go to roughly the center of where we want to turn off mob spawning, and keep in mind that this will turn off mob spawning 4 chunks in each direction. Now, with that being said, you definitely do not have to mark out chunks. You can just guesstimate and build this roughly in the center of the area that you want to turn off spawns. And you can build this down at bedrock or up in the nether roof. It doesn't matter what Y level you build these at. The game will check from top to bottom for mobs, even if those mobs aren't actually loaded. But we're going to start off by placing walls surrounding 4 blocks. So there will be 4 open blocks in the middle of the walls. Then we're going to go up by 1 block of air and build the same thing above it. So we have 2 sections of walls floating directly above each other. Now we need to throw in eggs until we have 3 baby chickens. Once we have 3 baby chickens, we need to throw in a splash potion of oozing and kill any chickens that might have escaped. But once these have oozing, we need to carefully kill each chicken. And as the slimes spawn, we're going to go ahead and name tag these 2 big slimes, just in case we accidentally hit one of the slimes while hitting the chicken. The reason this is important is that we need all 6 of the medium slimes to be name tagged. If they're name tagged, when you kill the medium slimes, the baby slimes won't be name tagged, but they will have persistence, meaning that they won't despawn. So just name tag these medium slimes as you go along in case you hit one of them with your sword. As long as they're name tagged, it's okay. But if you accidentally kill one before it's name tagged, well, then you gotta start all over. But once you have all 6 medium slimes, we need to carefully kill all 6 of the medium ones. Try not to hit any of the tiny slimes. If you hit a tiny slime, you will need to replace it. So just take your time and be very careful not to kill any of the tiny slimes. But once you're done, you will now have 16 tiny slimes that have persistence. So if we just fly away and let everything despawn, we can see that all 16 of these slimes still exist. So even though they're not name tagged, they do have persistence. And now these 16 slimes are taking up the 16 monster cave cap that the nether has. So the only things that can spawn now are these hoglins, because these are actually animals. So to turn these off, we would need 4 animals to exist in the nether, which is super duper easy. All we have to do is build another group of walls and throw in eggs until we have 4 baby chickens. Now we just need to give these baby chickens persistence, which they might have persistence just from hatching the egg, but you could always name tag them or just feed them wheat seeds if you're worried about it. You know, wheat seeds will definitely give them persistence. Any animal that you feed will have persistence. So either way, just make sure those 4 baby chickens don't despawn, and that will prevent the hoglins from spawning. So once you have 4 animals and 16 baby slimes, aka cave spawned monsters, it will turn off all spawns in this area. Now, one thing to note is that while you're here, the mobs will need to despawn first. And some mobs might have persistence randomly. You know, like if a mob picked up a weapon or something, I think that gives them persistence. You know, so you might wander around first and check and make sure that there are no stragglers. But after that, we will see that nothing will spawn below or above these switches. So again, you could build these down at bedrock and it will cover the entire vertical area. The Y level doesn't matter. For some reason, even if monsters or mobs are not loaded, the game still checks to see if they're there when triggering spawns. So as we can see, there are no mobs that are spawning underneath the mob switch that we just built. So you can build these safely down at bedrock or up in the ceiling and not have to worry about it. But we see that a mob spawned right there, but if we dig above where that mob spawned, we can see that it spawned outside of the 4-chunk border, immediately on the other side. So mobs will spawn on the outside of the 9x9 chunks centered on your mob switch, but they won't spawn on the inside. So you can just duplicate these every 8 to 10 chunks, and it will continue turning off mob spawning in that whole area. An example of this actually being used, say we want to build a fortress farm, like a wither skeleton farm. You know, and these are just so extremely dangerous to build because the fortress itself is extremely dangerous. So instead, if we just go up into the ceiling or down at bedrock in roughly the center of where the fortress is and build one of these mob switches, then it will turn off spawning in that whole section of the fortress. So just figure out what the coordinates of your fortress are, then go down to bedrock to those coordinates, build your mob switch down there, and maybe even build multiple mob switches to cover the entire fortress. But either way, the next time you return, it will be a ghost town. No scary fortress mobs anywhere, no wither skeletons or blazes. Now, one thing to note is that this will not affect mob spawners. Spawners check a smaller range to see how many mobs are there, so just, keep an eye out for spawners and maybe stay away from those. But everything else will be perfectly safe. Now, this does work the exact same way for the Overworld, with one difference, and that is the Overworld has what's called surface spawns for monsters. A surface spawn is a monster that spawns with access to the sky above its head. And baby slimes always count toward the cave cap, regardless of where they were when they spawned. So this won't work for surface spawns, but it will work for cave spawns. So cave spawns is anytime a monster tries to spawn, if there is a solid block blocking the sky above its head, that is a cave spawn. So if we start killing some of these baby slimes, we can see that cave spawns now start appearing all over the place because we opened up the cap by killing the baby slimes. It's harder to make a surface mob switch than a cave mob switch because the tiny slimes are always cave mobs. I have been told that the medium slimes can act as both surface and cave spawns. However, these right here were spawned in the same method as before, using an oozing potion on chickens. They had access to the sky as they spawned, but they are not surface spawns because mobs are still spawning on the surface. Another thing to note is that the end is the opposite of the nether. Where the nether is only cave spawns, the end is only surface spawns. And unfortunately, there isn't really an easy way for us to create surface spawns. With cave spawns, we can just use oozing potions to summon slimes. But to make a surface mob switch, we would basically need to capture pre-existing surface mobs and then name tag them, which of course is more difficult than just, summoning some oozing slimes. But luckily, this will at least make your nether journey much safer and easier. Anytime that you go to build a nether farm, I would highly recommend just building a mob switch down at bedrock under the area that you want the farm to be. But that's all we got for this episode. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to like, favorite, share, and subscribe, and be sure to leave a comment. If you have any questions or requests, I will do my best to help you out. Or if you don't know what to say, just tell me hi. I would love to hear from you either way. Always remember that you are totally awesome, but above all, don't forget to have fun. Bye-bye.